What if the hobbies that you're already interested in aren't just fun, but they're literally changing the structure of your brain? Today, I'm going to be talking about 5 hobbies backed by actual neuroscience that do more for you than you'd probably think. So today's video is technically part 2 of the Brain Glow Up series that I started. If you haven't seen part 1, go check it out. I talk about glow up tips that no one's really talking about that are associated with your brain. Things like neuroplasticity, regulating your emotions, learning how to grow your attention span, all that fun stuff. But today, I'm going to be talking about hobbies. Still things to do with the brain, but hobbies that actually improve your brain that you wouldn't even think about. All those tips that I stated in part 1 can actually be reinforced through hobbies. So today I'm going to be talking about 5 hobbies that aren't just enjoyable, but they're actually doing real measurable work on your brain. Alright, so let's get into it. Number 1, which may be my favorite, is reading. Alright, so this one's kind of obvious. We all know that reading helps our brain. But the actual science behind it is so much deeper than people realize. Reading, specifically fiction, has been linked to something called the theory of mind, which is essentially your ability to model or copy other people's feelings and thinking. So when you're reading, you're not just absorbing a story, you're actually running a simulation of another person's inner life, which could be considered a genuine cognitive workout. You're taking all this information and you're actually creating something in your brain with it. For me, I've always loved reading fiction and fantasies, so it's so cool to actually know that when I'm reading a story and they're describing the characters and the setting, my brain is actually taking all the information and making pictures out of it and just using all of it to create something, which is honestly so cool. And that's part of the reason why I love talking to other people about books, is because everyone gets a different picture in their head, which is unique to your own brain. And going back to a little bit of what I talked about in part 1 of this series, reading is still the best way, or one of the best ways, to fix your attention span. Every page and every paragraph is still practice of sitting with one sort of media, taking in the information, rather than just scrolling past it and finding a new video every 8 seconds. I could go on and on about why reading is just so amazing and why I love it so much, as you can see by some of the books behind me, but it's honestly really cool to understand the process of what's happening when I'm reading. I think it's also really cool to switch up the genres that you read. Like I said, I read a lot of fantasy and fiction, but I've been trying to get into more classics recently. Like at the beginning of this year, I read a contemporary classic, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, which was really interesting and actually inspired me to create a short film. And I also read Wuthering Heights in honor of the movie. So I've been trying to expand my genres, expand my range of reading, and it's made me fall in love with it all over again. So basically, if there's at least one thing you take out of this video, it's go get your hands on a book and read it. Moving on to hobby number 2 is journaling. While reading has a little bit more to do with memory and taking in information, journaling has more to do with regulation. When you write about an experience, especially a difficult one, you're actually activating your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that is responsible for reasoning and impulse control. And when you activate the prefrontal cortex, it actually quiets the amygdala, which is the threat detection center of your brain. So basically, when you're writing down your experiences and you take something that happened to you and put it down on paper, put it into words, and you're not sugarcoating anything for someone else to read, it's just your own personal raw feelings, it actually takes those feelings and the emotion and processes it into something logical. And this is something that they can actually measure in brain scans. This is honestly just so cool to hear and understand, because I feel like there have been times where I've written something down that was a big problem in my life, or something I was really struggling with in that moment, and you write it down and it makes it seem so small. Or you write it down and you kind of see, oh, well, that's kind of stupid, or here's a solution. It's because your brain is taking those emotions and making it into something logical. So you're getting that feeling of anger, stress, sadness, and your brain can't think logically with all that clouding it. So you put it down on paper and things start to slowly make sense. Now, I'm not saying that if you write any problem you have in a journal, it's automatically going to be solved or you're going to figure out a way to solve it. What I'm saying is, when you write something down, it lets you release the emotional attachment to what you wrote down, to the situation you're in. It makes processing the emotions you have around that certain situation or that problem a lot easier to deal with. Journaling is something I've picked up recently, and I truly, truly have fallen in love with it. It used to be something I have to force, but now it's something I genuinely enjoy doing. A lot of times when I journal, it just makes me realize how grateful I am for things, which is another great thing is gratitude journaling, writing down either at night or in the morning throughout your day, things that you're grateful for because it makes your problems really seem smaller. At least that's been the case for me. And making my problems seem smaller or lowering how much stress I'm in and regulating my emotions is something that has significantly improved the quality of my days. When you're journaling and it's just for you, there's no pressure to write something that someone else would want to hear or make a story that you're writing entertaining. It is literally just taking your feelings inside and kind of bringing them out in a way, putting them down on paper. It's also really cool to look back at what I wrote even a few months ago and see how much my life has changed and how much I've improved in my journaling journey as well. So, journaling has really no downsides to it. I recommend that everyone just start. It definitely will seem forced at first, but I promise you will slowly start to love it. And I think you'll realize how much it actually calms you down and makes you see things a little bit clearer. The third hobby is learning an instrument. I feel like I've always known how powerful learning an instrument is, but this is actually such a studied hobby because it's crazy how much of the brain it activates. And it's really rare for an activity or something like playing an instrument to do that. So, what I learned was that when you're playing an instrument, your motor coordination, your auditory process, your memory, and your emotions are all firing together at once. And you can actually see the difference in a musician's brain because their brains actually show differences in auditory processing and coordination. And you don't even need to be good at an instrument for these processes to occur. The actual learning stage, the messing up, the not knowing how to play, just slowly starting, is when the rewiring of your brain to be able to do the stuff that musicians do and see the structural differences in their brain. That's when that stuff is all happening when you're learning and just starting out. This is honestly just insanely cool. If you weren't convinced enough to start an instrument, this should be another reason to add to the list. When I was younger, I got a keyboard, and over these years, I've kind of on and off tried to play, but this honestly was just such a good reminder for me to continue because it's so cool how the processes work together in your brain when you start playing. Learning this information was kind of my reminder to take that up again because not only is it fun to learn something new, but it's so cool that something as simple as playing the keyboard in my free time is doing something so amazing in my brain. I also have a guitar that I tried to learn a couple times but was slowly failing at. So I definitely want to pick that up because this is just reinforcing the idea that the learning and the struggling is just teaching my brain even more and strengthening it. The fourth hobby is things like puzzles, chess, any strategy based game. These strategy based games really benefit your working memory. So, what you're doing is you're using your working memory to hold and manipulate information in real time. An example of this is doing a crossword. You have the possible combinations, so your brain's withholding those combinations while checking for the one that best fits. And your working memory is one of the first cognitive functions that declines with age and stress. So, using these strategy games to keep that part of your mind sharp is extremely important. It's truly heartbreaking to see people lose their memory, and this is one of the things that I want to preserve for as long as possible. And the fifth and last hobby is a movement based hobby. Now, this is the one that can definitely be the most difficult to stick with. But what's fun about it is that it doesn't have to be a specific movement. It can be any range of movements. It can be running, dancing, lifting weights, Pilates, yoga, literally any type of movement. So here's the simple version that I learned on why it actually matters. When you exercise, your brain releases something called BDNF, which stands for brain derived neurotrophic factor. And I know what you're thinking, like, what is that? Because I also had no idea. So, in simple terms, what BDNF does is it's kind of like fertilizer for your brain. It grows new connections between brain cells, which I learned is actually very rare. BDNF is one of the only things we know that will grow your brain's neural connections as an adult. So, this is something that in the long run is very, very important. We also know that exercising does something for you that is immediate, which is releasing endorphins. These are the chemicals that actually boost your mood immediately after a workout. So, when you exercise, you get a short term mood boost, but you also get long term brain building. So, exercise isn't just about your physique, and it's not just how well you perform an exercise, but it's one of the hobbies that the brain development just happens no matter how good you are at something. As long as you're just moving your body, it's improving your brain. When I learned this, it honestly just kept me even more motivated to work out because there's always this pressure to do a workout perfectly or optimize it or excel at something. But literally, just dancing around the house is protecting and improving your brain. So, movement doesn't have to be some crazy thing like 2 hours at the gym every day. It can be something as simple as just going for a walk, and it is truly benefiting you. So, make sure you're moving your body in any way every single day. So, those 5 hobbies are something you can do for fun and because they're enjoyable, but the science behind what they do towards your brain is incredible. The things you do for fun, like your hobbies, aren't separate from your brain and your mental glow up. Learning this information was honestly just so fun and so cool. It amazes me every day how much our brain does, and I've really recently fallen in love with learning about it. So, if this is something that you enjoyed and you want another part of this Brain Glow Up series, let me know and make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Make sure to also leave any ideas you'd like me to film or videos you'd like me to create next, and I will make sure to check them out. Anyways, that is all for today in the second part of the Brain Glow Up series. I hope you're all enjoying these videos and that your brain is glowing up along with me. I will see you in the next one.